Welcome everyone to the 20th Annual Charter Awards Ceremony. And this is also the final session of CNU's first ever virtual Congress. I'm sure, like me, you're going to be very sad to see this go away. It's been a wonderful few days, and it's been delightful to see everyone online, even if not in person. So we are also today, before we officially launch the awards ceremony, I have the distinct honor and privilege to welcome the 2020 class of CNU Fellows. The CNU Fellows program recognizes the lasting contributions of individuals to new urbanism. And you see before two stalwart members of CNU for years who have done so much work on behalf of the organization and the movement. These two were unanimously selected by the CNU National Board of Directors for their outstanding leadership in new urbanism. And both of these individuals will get their pins next May at CNU 29 in Oklahoma City. So the 2020 class of CNU Fellows is Johnny Longo and Jeff Speck. Congratulations, many, many congratulations to both of you. You both truly deserve it. Next, I would like to introduce Liz Plater-Zyberk. Liz really needs no introduction. She's one of the founders of New Urbanism and an inspiration, and has been an inspiration to all of us, particularly the women of CNU. Liz is going to give us a retrospective of the Charter Awards that we've celebrated over the past 20 years. I'm sure you will find it fascinating. Liz, take the stage.
Thank you, Lori. I'm delighted to be with you all today and to have been asked to present. You can see I'm fussing with my screen. To present a short background on the Charter Awards, a short history, in other words. And so I'm going to take you through a few slides, dropping in an advertisement for Matt Lambert's pub crawl at 8:30 following this whole event this evening. And also wishing to thank the people who have put this presentation together. They include, of course, Rob Studeville, who did much of the work enabling this, but also two people in my life at the University of Miami, Joanna Lombard, who was a tech support, and you'll see a piece of work by David McCon, a graduate student some years ago, who put together actually a database of all the awards. And so that's something that might be of interest in the future. Just to give you some background, to start with the background, how did the Charter Awards start? You know, in the beginnings of the Congress, there was a lot of discussion about excellence, the quality of the work, what really was new urbanism, what was not, who was hitching a ride on our coattails when they shouldn't have been, how to award the victories, the difficult victories that many of our projects represented. And we wanted to call attention to best practices, of course. But one of the important reasons behind it was the concern about the marketing abuse of the principles, the kind of misidentification of projects as following the principles of new urbanism when they really were not. And there was a long discussion about certification. USGBC had come online about the same time that the Congress did. And we really did discuss whether we should start a CNU certification. The discussions were vociferous, and eventually we came upon this idea of the awards. And at that point, it became an easy decision to go forward. So in the 2000 Congress, we decided to go forward with this. In these 20 years, and here is the database visible, I think you can see mentioned at the lower right-hand corner that the new Urban Archive has all of this information. And you can see how it's parsed out in that 2001 close-up. But over 300 projects have been recognized in these 20 years. There are a lot of things that you can find when you look at all of them. There have been 27 firms and universities who've come back many times, or let's say more than twice, to present their projects, and 137 others who've brought in one project at a time, and often a municipality, for instance, very proud of the work that it's done to improve itself. And there's been, as you can see, a variety of numbers of awards depending on which year and who the jury is. So here's some of the juries over the years. For some reason or other, it was decided early on that maybe 7 was a good number. Obviously, you want an odd number, but many people have served. And I would say if you haven't, or you would like to serve again, you certainly should let Lynn Richards know so that she can invite you again. Many international awards. I think this might be surprising for you all to see how many different parts of the world have joined our efforts, and how important it is to have this kind of recognition. And I'm going to take you through those 20 years very quickly. 2 years a slide, except for this one, which was our starting year, 2001. And already 10 years, that's less than 10 years into the life of the organization. But there was already Hope 6, and I'll be mentioning a few projects. I'm sorry if I leave anybody out. It's not intended to be prioritizing anything by any means, but really just to show you a kind of range of the diversity of scale, location, and resources that enabled these projects. So already in 2001, codes, airport reuse, Hope 6, regional plans, the kind of full range of projects was being presented. And of the 12 that were premiated that year, really only 3 had been built. And of course, that's one of the ways that we've evolved, is that more and more of the projects every year are that are being submitted are completed projects. In 2002, we were already engaging the establishment firms who were building some of the larger projects, such as Addison Circle and Bethesda Row. Del Mar Station, which was a prize winner, is now a completed project. In 2003, many of the communities that have been burnishing the reputation of the new urbanism over time were being awarded, as well as the first highway teardown in Milwaukee. In 2004, some large urban interventions, Sankt Erik from Stockholm, which if you've never had a chance to see it, is worth looking up. Hope 6 continued, and some small urban buildings such as Mullen Palazoides' first, the building which brought us closer to the USGBC. Also first projects in China in 2005 and India. Belmar, an early mall redevelopment in 2005, and an early university project, the first university engagement with the community, Beals Hill in Macon, Georgia. So you're beginning to see the variety that I'm sure you're quite aware of anyway. Downtown Providence and Boston's TOD corridor in 2006 reflects, in a sense, the growing interest in New England. There's a vital chapter in New England. 2007, of course, the post-Katrina projects were being brought in, the regional plan, the Katrina cottages, the pattern book for the state of Louisiana, and also some of the early new urban projects were beginning to be recognized much after their heyday or beginnings, such as Harbor Town. And you might note that this was the peak, an economic peak, so it was a bumper crop of projects. In 2008, as we were beginning to feel the recession, a number of publication initiatives were recognized. In 2009, likewise, the Smart Code and projects that had been underway for some time, such as Baldwin Park, Columbia Heights, a downtown transit-oriented redevelopment project. In 2010, perhaps fewer awards reflecting the recession's impact. Retrofitting suburbs for seniors, working on topics that had been bubbling up in discussions in the CNU. Agricultural urbanism was beginning to appear. Rail corridor projects in 2011, the Massachusetts South Coast Rail Corridor Plan was the grand prize winner. And then at the same time, quite beautiful small inner city interventions such as St. Anne's Square in Belfast. Cottage greens, which had begun appearing in our work. 2012, from Savannah, Georgia to South Africa, an agricultural town in South Africa, SCAD, and an in-town project, the Georgetown Social Safeway, which was a groundbreaking supermarket being brought up right to the sidewalk with its parking contained inside. I think sometimes we take these things already for granted, and it's worth thinking back about what victories they were and how the battles were won in order to make these things happen. Large-scale regional planning continued, the Great Lakes Regional Vision Plan, a project in Rwanda proffered by one of the universities that have participated in these awards, and plans in the UK. In 2014, tactical urbanism was being recognized. A beautiful project in China, Heart of the Lake by Robert Stern's office. Jean Lafitte Tomorrow was Dover Cole's climate change retreat plan, one of the first. No doubt we will be seeing others. In 2015, the Plan El Paso zoning laws, that you might remember how there was a huge contingent from the city of El Paso who joined us that year at the conference, the Pearl Brewery, Iberville offsites, a kind of much after, many years after Katrina, but nevertheless still rebuilding New Orleans. And finally, likewise in 2014, the Fayetteville Food City scenario, very interesting citywide ag to table to waste management research plan, which came out of the University of Arkansas. And so continuing in 2016, an example of the Partnership for Sustainable Communities program, which was put together by 3 federal agencies, projects in Detroit as part of its revival being recognized. The Chairman's Test of Time Award by Jury Chair Hank Dittmar, a special favorite of Hank's, whom we remember fondly, was this corridor that had been built for rebuilt for many years. In 2017, recognizing building renewals such as the Boston Public Library, a city hall in Mexico, and the beautiful architecture that a number of our members produce in the cities. In 2018, again, publication recognized in a remarkable book in which cities in Africa have been documented by a university group. Crosstown Concourse in Memphis, a large building renovation, affordable housing in England, the University of Connecticut bringing its campus downtown to a city that needs that sort of infusion. 2019, recognizing recent efforts at Seaside. We were in Louisville, so Norton Commons was being recognized. And many people remember the bus tour through the Midwest, which took them to a remarkable place called Carmel, Indiana, where one of its projects was being recognized. And of course, geoaccounting, any jurisdiction, Urban Three's remarkable method that looks at the impact of the built environment on municipal finance, which I understand had some very interesting sessions at this meeting just a few days ago. So CNU is truly building places people love, just like our website says. There's an incredible list of different types of projects that we get involved in. You could make this list longer, I'm certain. But it's a remarkable record to look back on. And I think those of us who have been involved in any of these projects understand what tremendous effort goes into them across the disciplines and across, generally speaking, large collaborative teams that have to produce them. I think it's worth congratulating all of our past award winners and taking inspiration from them as we move forward into this year's awards. Now, along the way to this year's awards, we're going to remember someone who was very important to many new urbanists and who set an example for us in many ways. And that's Jack Robertson, who recently passed away. Cooper Robertson Partners was his most recent firm involvement. I'm not going to read everything that's on the slides. There are 2 slides representing Jack's, our memory of Jack. And his partners at Cooper Robertson have long been stalwart new urbanists, as I think Jack would say that he was as well. Having grown up in Virginia, he was an incredibly gracious personality and someone who had an effect on a lot of people. Award-winning in many ways. I remember him as someone who represents a way of being that seems to have escaped us in recent years. A way of bringing people together for the intellectual discussions that we all enjoy, but not just intellectual, but also political. In the earnest attempt, Jack always had a kind of attitude of being earnest about trying to understand the experience of the other. He was the graceful opposition to the New York Whites when we were all having discussions about style in the 70s and 80s. The Charlottesville tapes were that kind of conversation, which he initiated and are amusing to go back to. But certainly, he's someone to emulate, not only for his contributions to cities and to design, but also in terms of his engagement in the great discussions that we find ourselves in today. So we will miss him, but recognize him in a scholarship fund in his name for CNU 29 in Oklahoma City.
Thank you, Liz. That was a wonderful recap of 20 years of great projects. It is an honor to serve as jury chair for the 20th Annual Charter Awards and as host for tonight's ceremony. Tonight, we will recognize 14 projects from around the world and hear directly from the 7 Charter Award winners and our special award winner regarding their projects. Award winners represent 9 states and 3 countries, including submissions by the private sector and local government and promising student projects. This year, the jury awarded 14 total awards with a mixture of charter, merit, and student awards. We will start with our merit and student awards and work our way to the grand prize. A common theme that ran through the jury deliberations, both considering recent charter awards and this one in particular, was a degree of competency that runs through the majority of the submissions. Though we focused on our mandate to identify only a limited number of charter award winners, most reflective and representative of our theme, that of using design as a means to address our most pressing challenges, of course recognizing that COVID was not in this year's optics, there were many submissions that we wanted to award special recognition. Our first Merit Award winner is student project Connecting Crossroads, imagining an equitable future for Langley Park and the International Corridor. Student submissions are always encouraging, and this one stood out in particular for its breadth and depth and for meeting our design-oriented theme. This one using urban infill and suburban retrofit to connect and nurture a culturally diverse yet relatively low-income community in Maryland. Congratulations to Sarah Ghaffar Samar of the University of Maryland. Our second Merit Award winner is the Bastrop Building Block Code. I love this project out of Bastrop, Texas, an emerging project utilizing the street grid as a basis for a code that ensures fiscal and environmental sustainability. Congratulations to Simple City Design and the City of Bastrop, Texas. Our third Merit Award winner is the Cleveland Park Library. It is notable that we had 2 fantastic civic projects with a library component competing for jury attention this year. We love the neighborhood scale and the charming, competent design for this library in Washington, D.C. Congratulations to Perkins Eastman, D.C. Our fourth Merit Award winner is the La Fontana District. I believe that new neighborhoods based on the walkable mixed-use T&D neighborhood model will be more important than ever as we move into the future. As many of you may have heard me yesterday, I fear this foundational CNU design competency is not being effectively passed on to the next generation of urbanists. This project exemplifies the T&D in the new century, a functional yet beautiful neighborhood design in the historic city of David, Panama. Congratulations to Mool and Polyzoides. Our fifth Merit Award winner is the Midtown Pattern Zone, another fantastic emerging project. This pattern zone in Bryan, Texas, raises the level of infill design through well-conceived, pre-approved infill housing plans. This is certainly one to watch and has wide-ranging implications for new urbanists everywhere. Go Texas. Congratulations to Matthew Petty, Infill Group, Matthew Hoffman, Miller, Boskus, Lack. And finally, our fifth Merit Award winner is the River District Implementation Plan. Exemplifying the new urbanism's response to building resilient cities, this project combines some of our best strategies: urban infill, suburban retrofit, and fiscal responsibility, diverting funds from parking infrastructure toward building a vital mixed-use place. Congratulations to Speck and Associates and Stantec's Urban Places. And now for our Charter Award winners. Upon introduction, each winner will present a few slides and a brief overview of their project. Our first award winner is Beatrice Rowe. I'll give you a second to get that up on the screen. Our first award winner is Beatrice Rowe in Coral Gables, Florida, by De La Guardia, Victoria Architects and Urbanists. The jury loved not only the beauty of this building, but the modern introduction of the townhouse to Coral Gables and its placemaking contribution and activation of a nearby civic space. Teofilo Victoria will now present on behalf of this project.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you see the screen? No, is the project on the screen? Yeah, wow. Well, thank you very much. We are, Maria and I are very grateful for this award. We know how hard it is to receive a CNU award, but we're very happy, very thankful, of course. And we're also like to commend the CNU staff, in particular, in its leadership for, bringing this Congress to this point. Is quite extraordinary. It really is quite wonderful. So Beatrice Rowe, you're seeing this in the screen, I think, a site plan that places the project in the context of the city of Coral Gables, and the evolution of the scheme involved a very difficult but nonetheless productive engagement between the architects and the developers and the city of Coral Gables, of course, where a clause or an article in the zoning code of the city was introduced to allow for the townhouse to be built with certain prerogatives. It was, though, a very interesting contribution to the city, to the variety of product in the city, and it would prove to be eventually of great value from a, let's say, financial perspective, from a development perspective, because it was a means, or a product rather, by which people living in the suburbs of the city of Coral Gables or further away from the center of town could find a fee simple townhome in the close to the center of the city. The title of the submission was "The Discrete Urbanism of the Terrace House," modeled after Luis Buñuel's title of that strange movie. And what we meant to explain with this is that while we weren't able to devise great plans, urban plans for the city of Coral Gables, we could, though, follow an Albertian maxim where every building has an urban responsibility, a responsibility to build the good city, as Alberti would say, for both individuals as community alike. And so we've always felt that architecture, the single building, can indeed promote an idea about the city. And in the case of Beatrice Rowe, which is a terrace house project, is 9 townhomes. The effects are very real. The street section, for instance, is modeled in a very specific way, spatially, that is. The relationships from in terms of walking distances to the center of town from the parks of the city was also a very important new aspect of this type of building. And even though modest and discreet, as the title suggests, it nonetheless works towards building a beautiful city. And so we feel also that the architect's responsibility must engage not just the city, but also associated institutions that affect the building of the city. In our case, for instance, being able to work with the with Art in Public Places program was critical, because we were able to imbue the project with a civic dimension or content that went beyond the single building. You know, even though we believe that the single building can indeed be effective in building cities, it's if it can relate more specifically or intimately to the public spaces, civic spaces like a park in the case of Balboa Park in this case, of Beatrice Row, even better, you know. So we were able to convince the city of Coral Gables, and in particular the Art in Public Places program, to coincide with our civic intentions in collaboration with the architectural public arts firm of R&R of Roberto Bear and Rosario Marguart. So say we're very happy, we're very grateful, and we hope that in the future we will be able to contribute in different ways or more ways to this amazing organization, really. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teofilo. And thank you, De La Guardia Victoria Architects and Urbanists, and congratulations. Okay, so the good news is that we're actually running right on time as of now. The bad news is I am going to ask our future presenters to please be brief, probably less than 4 minutes. I think you were in the zone, Teofilo, but I just want to make sure that we get that out there so that we are continue to run on time out of respect for everybody, and especially Matthew's pub crawl that happens after our event. So moving on. Our second Charter Award winner is Bach in Philadelphia by Scout Limited. We were in awe of the accomplishment of this conversion of an abandoned vocational high school into a beehive of affordable workspace and community activity in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We were even more impressed by what is still to come as this project continues to build on its success. Lindsay Scanapieco will now present on behalf of this project.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay. I am the managing partner at Scout. We're an urban design and development practice, particularly focused on underutilized spaces. So first of all, I just want to thank CNU for this award. It is such an incredible honor. This summer is 5 years of us working on this project, and it has been a labor of love and still not complete. And it's just such an honor to be here amongst so many impressive award winners. So thank you very much. So with that, I'll tell you a little bit about Bach and what we've done. So this is the building. It's a 340,000 square foot school. It occupies an entire city block in South Philadelphia. And I think it's important to understand the context that it sits. Like so many schools, it sits within a very residential community. It has a towering presence. It is by far the largest building in the area, and the kind of responsibility that therefore that holds, the memory that holds when a school closes. In the city of Philadelphia, this was one of 32 schools that closed, but that story is probably familiar to many of you. I think Detroit closed over 120 schools. Chicago closed over 60 schools. Pew did a study where they looked at 600 schools, and 5 years later, 52% of them were still vacant. This is a very challenging typology to be able to reuse. It's very inflexible. It also is it's not very transparent. And so for us, looking at edges of generosity as an opportunity to invite people into a building and change it from being something that, although it was quite public in terms of service, was actually quite private in terms of use, to something that people could come into. So at the rear of the building, I call it our stage door. We have a coffee shop, bike shop, a cafe, where we have a wellness center opening particularly for the immigrant and refugee community with Jefferson Hospital. That'll be a 7,000 square foot clinic opening this year, which we're really proud of. In our community, 15% of our population is foreign born. So here's just a snapshot of some of the tenants in the building. We have 175 tenants in the building today. We're about 87% complete. We've tackled this project very gradually. We got funding initially for one floor, renovated that, proved that it worked, borrowed a little bit more money. So it's been a very gradual development. But for us, it's really about affordability. That's the best way to support entrepreneurs, small businesses, innovators, creatives, makers, artists. We have all of those in the building. In the left-hand corner here, we have Machine Shop Boulangerie. They're a wholesale bakery located in the building. They got their name because they're in the old machine shop. So they wanted the concrete floors. They were looking for a room with a ton of power. The machine shop was a perfect fit for them. So our approach is very much about a light touch approach, acknowledging what already exists, look at what infrastructure can be reused. This is the bike shop. You can see we have a hairdressing salon, some offices, everything from ESL classes to a daycare to glass blowers, ceramic artists, and so much more. 52% of our businesses are women owned, which we're really proud of, and 70% are owned by somebody who lives in South Philadelphia. The proximity to where you work has so much impact on your mental health, and as well as the economic health and wealth of your neighborhood. And so that's been a really key part of this project. So I thought I would just end. This is a picture of, we have a rooftop bar called Bach Bar. If you are in Philadelphia, after coronavirus, I would invite you to come by for a drink. It has an incredible view of the city. But I also think it's a good thing to acknowledge. We talk a lot about being socially minded and commercially viable. The bar was actually one of the first things that we put into the building. It was our kind of way of creating an anchor tenant to allow us to have a little bit more flexibility downstairs and make sure that we keep it affordable. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for your time and for this recognition. It is a true honor, and I just want to thank everybody on my team who's been a part of this project. It's been a monumental task. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. I think it looks to be, there's plenty of room on that rooftop patio to social distance. So I will see everybody there after the presentation. Moving on. Our third Charter Award winner is the Center for Territorial Intelligence and Biodiversity in Curitiba, Costa Rica, by Tandem Arquitectura and the Municipalidad de Curitiba. My Spanish is a little bit rusty, I apologize. An emerging project in a place known for cutting-edge environmental activism, the jury appreciated the locally focused village-scaled efforts serving as an important model and knowledge base for studying climate change. Irina Garcia will now present on behalf of this project.
Irene Garcia.
We are very thankful and excited about this award. Thank you very much. The seed field is located in Curitiba, Costa Rica. Our center is immersed in our vision of the city called Sweet City. The starting point of this vision is a focus on biodiversity, a balanced urban environment as the key to enhance well-being through an increase in contact with nature and a multidimensional roster of amenities and services that make the city become not only greener, but also more colorful and livable. The keystone is to consider pollinators as the most efficient agents of prosperity. 5 dimensions linked to well-being are considered in order to plan and create a better city: biodiversity, infrastructure, habitat, coexistence, and productivity.
Excuse me, could we see your slides? Have you shared your screen?
Share the screen.
Y ya le di que sí, pero ya no.
Ajá, y ahí donde dice compartir. Y revisa que el volumen esté aquí.
Okay, good. Gracias.
Con gusto.
Puedes tener en grande.
Ya la están viendo, ya la están viendo. Ya la están viendo.
Pero no en full screen.
No importa, porque usted escogió solo eso, el PDF. No escogió el escritorio.
Ah, ok, cierto. Oye,
Sí, sí, lo puede.
No la están viendo en full screen.
pregunta.
Are you seeing the presentation in full screen?
Yes, full screen, we have.
Okay, so we have under that 5 dimensions that I mentioned, 7 main experiences that we want to shift in a 5-year period in our government. Adequate water management, recovery of soil health, improvement of the sense of security in key spaces, and enhancement of intermodal transportation and walkability, also the promotion of conscious eating and mental health, and a strengthening of participatory local governance. As you can see, our seat bio, it's connected with at least 5 parks and at least 6 schools, 1 daycare center, a few universities, and is also surrounded by active commercial activity, including our organic fair. One of our 2 main rivers named TDV and its biological corridor. Also, we have what we have defined as our emeralds, which are biological connectivity and conservation key spaces in the city that we have limited quantity of these emeralds. And we have 2 of our flagship human development centers surrounding our Center of Biodiversity also. In MERS, there is a compound of smaller urban ecotechnics prototypes, which are part of our official green infrastructure protocol of the city that we have tested with the communities and defines the axes and components of a bigger net. This is the blueprint of the seed bio. This building includes an indoors greenhouse, a reception area, and all you see here, all the landscape which corresponds to the outdoor greenhouse that are already under construction. It includes cultural and economic component, an exhibition and shop where we want to sell our publications, we want to sell the native plants that attract pollinators and also the seeds. It's going to be an arts and cultural exhibition area, a multi-use area regarding the approach to community needs that we'll need to see which is the demand on that. And also the nutritious food cafeteria, amongst others. Also, it will have a productive and education components. We will offer to the community and to other cities a workshop space, greenhouse labs, research and demonstrative area for regenerative landscape and other replicable ecotechnologies. And also, a very important component is the experiential component, which is immersed in an open showroom of what the vision of the city is, Sweet City, landscape ludic spaces. What we have here, it's some of the ongoing projects and ecotechnics that are connected to the seed bio, parks, sweet sidewalks, what we call sweet sidewalks, which are full of our native plants that are part of a green sweet city catalog or guide that we have designed for pollinators. Our urban gardens, bee stations, our first pergola that is part of our Central Park in Curridabat, You can see the pollinator station there and some public space. So now it's 4 minutes and 19 seconds. So I think that will be it.
You
We're looking
guys
for
did excellent. I appreciate it. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. So
Okay.
we're looking forward to visit us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the municipality of Curitiba, and congratulations to Tandem Arquitectura. I think that's a little bit of an improvement. Moving on, our 4th Charter Award winner is King Open Cambridge Street Upper Schools and Community Complex in Cambridge, Massachusetts by William Ron Associates, Architects Incorporated, and Arrow Street Architecture and Design. The Cambridge Street Community Complex provides much needed public spaces and inclusive facilities in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a great civic use integrating into and activating a neighborhood center. Cindy Meyer and Larry Spring will now present on behalf of this project.
On behalf of William Ron Associates, I want to thank the Congress for New Urbanism for this honor. We'd also like to thank our consultants and Arrow Street for being a great partner and associate architect, and the William Ron team whose passion and commitment made this project a success.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'm Larry Spang from Arrow Street, and very pleased to be here. I'd also like to thank the Congress for New Urbanism for recognizing what we consider a very extraordinary project that was developed by the City of Cambridge. We'd also like to thank our partners at the city for the chance to work with them on this, as well as William Ron Associates, our team at Arrow Street, and our consultants for all their contributions to what really was a huge community engagement.
So the principals of the schools gave us a mandate to design a project that exemplified the community's commitment to social justice, access, and equity. And they also challenged us to balance the sense of community welcome while making a safe space for their youngest citizens. The King Open School is many things to many people. It's 2 schools, a daycare, a public library, 2 gyms, 2 pools, a series of parks, and home to the public school administration. The building is separated into 2 wings, an academic wing and a community wing. And this allows it to form a crescent-shaped civic plaza that welcomes all to the space. The project is surrounded by a series of green spaces and open spaces that invite the public to participate and claim the building as their own.
The King Open Cambridge Street Upper Schools and Community Complex represents a new vision by the City of Cambridge to integrate their schools with the entire community, creating a resource that supports students, their families, and neighbors. The campus is a vibrant hub of activities for the entire city, operating beyond normal school hours to provide afternoon, nights, and weekends and summertime activities. The project also serves some of the city's most vulnerable population, bringing education, family support, and other critical support social services to the entire community. When we think about the principles of new urbanism, this mix of education and social services support integrated into a vibrant urban neighborhood is precisely the sort of far-reaching vision we all should be striving for. So we're very pleased to be recognized by the Congress of New Urbanism.
The King Open project reflects Cambridge's commitment to creating a carbon neutral community by 2050. And this building is one of the first net zero emissions projects for the city. The community complex offers a variety of public amenities, and by bookending the most public functions, the pools and the library, the building sends a strong signal to the public to engage its community resource. So thanks everyone for this award.
Thank you, Larry and Sindhu. Congratulations to William Ron Associates Architects Incorporated and Arrow Street Architecture and Design. And so congratulations. Moving on. Our 5th Charter Award winner is Sonoya, Georgia, Reclaiming Small Town Identity by Historical Concepts. A rare small town largely untouched by suburbanism, here is a project that proves that you can do functional new urbanism beautifully, an important precedent and inspiration for thousands of similar small towns all over North America. Todd Strickland will now present on behalf of this project.
All right, I'm having some technical difficulties. You guys see me?
Remember when sweaty palms was the only thing we had to worry about?
Oh. I can't. Sorry, guys.
Could you use some coaching? Have you pressed the green button?
I need help. Can you hear me?
Yes, have you shared screen?
I can't seem to.
There's a green button on the bottom that says share screen.
Sorry, guys. I am not seeing that on mine here.
Hey, Todd, this is Claire. I can share my screen if you want to just walk me through when to press next.
Let's do that.
Okay. All right, 1 second.
Okay. Got yours open?
Yes, now I'm trying to figure out how to share it.
Making me feel better. Thank you. It was working so well.
There we go. Do you see it?
Yep, I can see the upper corner there. Okay, so let me start. My name's Todd Strickland. I'm the managing principal of Historical Concepts. Obviously not the IT or the AV guy here. So apologies for the technical difficulty, but let me start by thanking CNU. I can remember, attending CNU way back in, I think it was 2001, and getting a copy of Suburban Nation from, and hearing Andres Duani speak at the time, and that book connected a lot of dots for me, and I've given out endless copies to elected officials, and the CNU has been a very meaningful part of how we see things ever since. So it's an honor to receive the award, and thank you to the jury for this recognition. So as we get into this, the city of Sonoya, Georgia is a small Main Street town about 45 minutes south of Atlanta. It was founded in 1860, has a population of approximately 4,000 people. And for a long time, the city had very little growth, which meant that its historic fabric was left relatively intact. But unfortunately, in the early 2000s, a warehouse was built at the end of the main street, for one of the few, retailers that were on that main street was a furniture shop. And there's a lot of vacant, parcels and vacant buildings, and they chose to build something at the end of the street that really was not appropriate, to the historic fabric that was there. And that was a wake-up call to the city of Sonoy that this quaint little town that they had was not necessarily guaranteed to stay quaint, in the future. And so that's when the Downtown Development Authority chairperson, Suzanne Helfman, kind of sprung into action. And it seems like there's always one person that works tirelessly behind the scenes to make good things happen. And Suzanne is that person for the town of Sonoy. She was determined to help revitalize, Sonoy without sacrificing its charming sense of place. And so as we kind of go through things here, we'll always be indebted to Suzanne Helfman for reaching out to us. We wound up, we can go to the next slide, here. This shows some of the before and afters of the city here. At the top, side is, top left is, what the main street looked like when in the early, I guess, 1999. And then there's a key intersection that was there that you see in the top right that was vacant. So there's a lot of vacant parcels. There's some nice, fabric, but more than anything, it was just a small town with some good bones, a lot of potential, but a lot of work to do, too. And so as you look at the bottom, slides, you can see where it is, today. In 2019, there's a lot of, vitality that the city has gone from having pretty much just a handful of shops that were open, in the early 2000s to now well over 50 shops, that are open now. And the challenge for us became, how do we, create guidelines? And that's really what the Downtown Development Authority, the City Council, and their Historic Preservation Commission, wanted us to do, was to create commercial guidelines that codified what they had and really help, the common person, if you will, to understand, here's your sense of place, your historic fabric is here. And these are the design aspects, the vocabulary, if you will, for creating new buildings. And they had, again, some good bones, but they had a lot of vacant parcels that something was going to happen in the future. And around this time, Georgia started getting some really progressive tax credits for the movie industry. And so that became an economic opportunity here. We'll talk about in just a second. And there's also some other things that happened with, Southern Living here also. But we wound up creating those guidelines with the Downtown Development Authority, the City Council, and the Historic Preservation Commission. And they were really great about wanting to protect the precedent, but also dream about what could be. And so that's something, if we can go to the next page. There we go. We started laying out, here's some buildings that have good bones, but how do we actually adapt them and kind of repurpose them to make them add to the sense of place? And how do we take, some vacant parcels and actually create, designs that are in keeping with what is there? And what we wound up doing was working with private developers also. As I mentioned, we were eventually introduced, after we did the guidelines, we did some conceptual elevations of what could do on these vacant parcels. We were introduced to Scott Tiglar and Paul Lombardi, who were in the movie industry, and they wound up buying 17 vacant parcels and buildings along the main street, which is a lot of control for just a couple folks to have. But fortunately, they were just great guys, creative, honest, smart, and they were determined to do things right. They wanted to really leave a legacy and something that we could all be proud of. So they became the legacy developer, and they turned those conceptual designs into actual buildings that look and felt like they'd always been a part of Sonoy. Paul eventually moved back to California, but Scott Tiglar chose to live in Sonoy and dedicate his time to making that vision of what could be in the future of Sonoy a built reality. So as we often hear in some of these really neat towns, just one building at a time, one block at a time, he was making a difference. And after 15 years, Sonoy went from only having the handful of shops to over 50 businesses there. All the other retail along Main Street wound up being filled and new Main Street buildings were built. There's a total of 4 new Main Street buildings that were built. And then we wound up having to extend the Main Street by activating the alley behind the Main Street. So as you see the 2 buildings, on the bottom right-hand corner, those are actually built, and that was on the first slide. And then behind that was a really god-awful alley that had nothing good going on, but we were lucky enough to imagine what could be there and plan some things and created this little axes that allowed traffic to go back and forth from Main Street to this alley behind it, and added a whole nother level of retail opportunity behind there. And at the end of the street, going to the next slide, we wound up having a 12-acre infill site that was literally just at the end of Main Street across some railroad tracks. We had a great time imagining what could be and coming up with, whether it was, apartments or a condo building or mixed-use building, a boutique hotel, attached townhouses, single family detached, live-work buildings, just a whole range of things that were envisioned to complement the existing, Main Street. And so that has, started taking place, and it's been a real pleasure to be a part of that and see how it has revitalized the town. And so for us, it's been something that's been a real labor of love, and we now consider, Scott Tiglar to be a good friend. He calls with the project, and we'll be there, and we know something is about to happen that we can all be very proud of. So we have a heartfelt thanks to our good friend Scott Tiglar. And last but not least, I just want to say thank you to the folks at the Historical Concepts team who worked on the Sonoy projects over the years. This includes my father, Jim Strickland, the master of hand waving as we get into these types of projects, as well as Clay Rakiki, Terry Pylan, Ryan Yakaba, Chris Kerrigan, Paul Knight, Dominic Trishita, Allison Vincent, Lindsay Labuddy, and many more. So the bottom line is we're a passionate group of traditional folks that just love, understanding historical precedent and working with towns like Sonoy to revitalize it, to put the skip in our step. And I also want to thank CNU again. Congrats on hosting the virtual Congress. Sorry for throwing the curveball here at the end. Avery did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd, and congratulations to Historic Concepts. Our 6th Charter Award winner is the Somerville Zoning Ordinance by the City of Somerville, Massachusetts. Beautifully and effectively illustrated and organized, the jury loved in particular the attention to sensitively injecting new density into the already healthy historic fabric. Dan Bartman will now present on behalf of their work.
I believe that's showing correctly. On behalf of everyone at Somerville and our entire project team, we'd like to say thank you and express how honored we are to win this award. Somerville is about 4 square miles just north of Cambridge in the Boston metropolitan area. It acknowledges itself for both good and bad reasons as the densest municipality in all of New England, and our planning office likes to potentially acknowledge that it might be the densest example of detached housing in the country. That presents very unique challenges, and we needed to respond with a unique code to address those issues. If you look at this diagram on the upper right, almost every one of these houses has 2 to 3 units inside of it. So that actually portrays a sense of suburban living to all of the residents that are there, actually in a very high density environment. And that brings a number of concerns when you're living that close together. This is an incredibly healthy level of density, but it does bring challenges related to it. One of the problems that we saw happening was actually in the bottom left. Our ordinance was allowing apartment buildings, not necessarily bad in their own right, to replace places that were previously houses, whereas the neighbors and the residents of Somerville were all asking if new development was going to happen in vacant lots, let's just have more houses. So we realized that we had an issue with our dimensional standards in our ordinance, and that we needed to get out there and start measuring the city. In the top left here, you can see 2 interns that I took out in, I believe it was 2014 for the entire summer, and surveyed probably about 80% of the streets in Somerville. We actually recorded measurements of hundreds of houses and did some remote sensing using GIS data analysis for many more. And although we uncovered the dimensions of porches and stoops and the width of houses and depth of houses, one of the things that we uncovered is reflected in all of these other photos here, is actually the presence of quote unquote missing middle housing throughout Somerville. So Somerville is not just a community of houses. It also has cottages, triple deckers, duplexes, sixplexes, fourplexes, small apartment buildings, row houses, uniquely painted so that they blend right in with the environment. And another layer of problem that existed with our previous ordinance was that it didn't recognize all of this diversity in building type. So we chose early on to start translating those dimensions that we had recorded into the different building types that you see here, and is reflected in our ordinance. This is just the neighborhood residence district, all the 6 building types that are permitted in that zone across the top here. But we also realized that we needed to have a way for these same buildings to be able to adapt over time, as they actually have been doing for generations in Somerville, and to be able to grow and change related to the specific needs of users in those buildings. So we created a system on top of building types that we called building components. So each building type here has a main massing that's just shown at the top in white, and standards for every component that can attach to that. So whether or not it's entry canopies, stoops, dormers, cross gables, side wings, rear additions, we wrote standards for all of those that kind of were all modeled off of in-field measurements in Somerville, and created a system that functions almost as much as a social contract as it does a development ordinance, for mitigating high density but detached houses and other building types, missing middle building types throughout Somerville, in a way that would allow new development to happen, infill development to happen, but to fit in with the existing fabric and not cause strife as each project comes along. The biggest achievement that we have that I think that this code brought is that this district, the neighborhood residence district, covers about 80% of the land area, and we succeeded in getting this development to be allowed by right. So I want to say thank you again for this award. We are very much humbled that we were chosen. I want to say a quick shout out to all of the CNU members that are coders out there that provided me with all kinds of guidance over the last decade. This ordinance wouldn't exist without all of you being a part of my life. So thank you very much for all of your mentorship. And thank you again for this award.
Thanks, Bartman, and congrats to the city of Somerville. Our 7th Charter Award winner is A Strategic Vision for Panama City's Historic Downtown and its Waterfront by Dover Cole and Partners. Rebuilding better than before is a common theme for new urbanism. A victim of a Category 5 storm in 2018, Panama City plugs in the new urbanism's full spectrum of tools and techniques to rebuild in a more resilient way. Amy Groves will now present on behalf of their work.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Amy Groves from Dover Cole and Partners. Thank you for having us here, and thank you to the CNU. I'm representing a larger project team that includes planners and designers from Dover Cole, as well as hall planning and engineering, our transportation planner, partners for economic solutions, our economist, and our green infrastructure experts, Horsley Witten Group. And so our work in Panama City started in April of 2019. Oops, sorry about that. Went a little far. Okay, sorry about that. Our work started in April of 2019, and this was, as you mentioned, 6 months after Hurricane Michael, a Category 5 storm, passed through the area. So Dover Cole was part of a larger effort led by Haggerty Consulting, and we worked to produce a long-term recovery plan for the city. Our work focused on downtown. We had a public charrette with walking tours, hands-on input meetings, small group discussions, an open studio, and worked with the community to imagine how they wanted to rebuild and what they wanted downtown to be like in the future. The charrette was part of a growing momentum to respond to the terrible destruction from the storm and create positive energy and rebuilding in what the community wanted to see. So from that process came the strategic vision with 10 cornerstone ideas to guide redevelopment, a few of which I'll highlight here. Ideas like giving the community more access to the waterfront. So as properties redevelop, a public pedestrian and bike promenade could be built to connect residents and visitors with waterfront views. There's ideas for having a larger population living in the downtown by allowing and encouraging a variety of housing types on the opportunity sites. There's ideas for how to redesign Harrison Avenue, seen here in this existing image, to better support downtown businesses with wider sidewalks and street trees and places for outdoor dining. And there's ideas for placemaking, creating memorable community space that incorporates community arts and historic preservation. There's many ideas in the plan for pedestrian and bike connections, including the redesign of streets and intersections, like this key intersection at the heart of town that's proposed to be a shared space plaza, accommodating pedestrians, cyclists, vehicles, and creating new gathering space. There's also a real focus on sustainable building and resilient infrastructure, so the city can be better prepared for future storms. This includes ways to build in low-lying areas to address sea level rise and water smart parks that serve both stormwater retention areas and as community parks. This plan was approved in November of 2019, and the city already has the initial implementation underway that includes updates to the zoning code, a tactical redo of street space for a plaza and outdoor dining area outside of a new brewery, and engineering for the first couple blocks of that Harrison Avenue redesign, and visioning to apply the cornerstones to the surrounding neighborhoods. So I just want to thank everybody for this award. Thanks to CNU and this opportunity to share our work with you.
Thank you, Amy, and congratulations to Dover Coal and Partners. Our 2020 Charter Awards Grand Prize winner is The Wharf in Washington, D.C. by Hoffman-Madison Waterfront. The jury was blown away by this project. Like many of the winners that engaged the new urbanism's many tools and techniques, here's one fully built and functioning, exemplifying the new urbanism in a high-density, transit-connected waterfront location. Sean Seaman will now present on behalf of the winning project.
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, and congratulations to all my fellow award winners here tonight. We're truly honored to be recognized by such an extraordinary organization as the Congress for New Urbanism. Before I start, I just want to give a special shout out to my alma mater, the University of Miami School of Architecture. Teofilo, who knew Julia Tuttle's garden project would have brought us so far. Thank you all so much. And Victor and Joe at Dover Coal, congrats to you as well. I enjoyed my time working with you all, and it's led to great things in my own career professionally. So thank you. I'm Sean Seaman. I'm a president at the Hoffman & Associates, and on behalf of my partners at Hoffman-Madison Waterfront, and my partner Eleanor Bacon, I know, is on the Zoom as well. Pleased to present our project, The Wharf. I'll do my best to do this in 3 to 5 minutes. It's been a labor of love for the last 15 years for sure. The Wharf has been a career-defining project for all of us that have been involved with it. I'm trying to advance, sorry. Oops, there you go. The 3.3 million square foot neighborhood has emerged from the remnants of one of the largest urban renewal sites in US history. And it's helped define sort of an oft-forgotten part of Washington, the southwest quadrant of DC. It's the smallest, but it has a lot of heart. DC is actually a riverfront city, which until very recently had virtually no waterfront access, particularly in the city-owned parts of the city. It's a federal enclave with lots of federal interests, but no city neighborhoods really, with the exception of Georgetown touching the waterfront. A decade earlier, the wharf in the area around the Potomac where the wharf rose up was actually the front door of the district and a thriving commercial hub. Most of that history was obliterated in the late 20th century. The wharf was conceived as the first of many site-specific waterfront developments initiated by the district government and the Anacostia Waterfront Corporation. The area had multiple redevelopment plans over 50 years before it really gained momentum in the early 2000s. The Hoffman team was selected in 2006. We were one of 17 competitors to implement the Anacostia Waterfront Initiative's vision. The wharf was structured as a 99-year ground lease with the District of Columbia, so it was imperative that the project delivered benefits not only for the developer, but also to the city. The design began with the master plan from Aaron Krantz Exit in Kuhn, which has since become Perkins Eastman. And it really looked to reverse the existing pattern of large single-use low-density buildings that turned their backs to the water. It was surrounded by over-designed infrastructure and parking, which you can see in the pictures here. The highlights of the master plan were small walkable blocks facilitated by below-grade parking, a water-first plan that created a central harbor, and 4 public piers that celebrated maritime activity. The plan included design guidelines for emphasizing the importance of the first 2 to 3 floors of the building, creating a strong base, and attempting where possible to create 4-sided retail blocks. Internalizing loading and service was important. We had a very narrow site between the water and Main Avenue. The neighborhood centerpiece is the wharf. It's a 60-foot hardscape, single-level waterfront street and promenade that links all the park's public spaces and piers together. The flexible design of the space is actually on display today when we're trying to restore the project from COVID-19's impacts. We're using the wharf for overflow dining for the restaurants so that they can get reopened. The project was made possible from $198 million of TIF pilot bonds from the District of Columbia. This financed all the infrastructure, the parks, the piers, and the open spaces. The fully realized 2-phase project will deliver in excess of nearly $60 million to the District of Columbia in annual tax revenue. We're a LEED ND Gold community and all the buildings are LEED Silver or higher. Wharf Street is the centerpiece of our sustainability initiative. We've gone from basically 100% runoff to 100% capture of the water up to a 3.2-inch rainfall event. And we're using the rainfall for the cooling tower makeup. Each of the individual buildings were designed by separate architects for the most part. We had up to almost 20 architects, 19 total, different architects and landscape architects on each of the 12 buildings in the 2 phases. And it really delivered an inclusive project to a wide spectrum of district residents. We created over 300 affordable housing units. 45% of all goods and services, that's about $415 million, went to district certified enterprise firms. 672 district residents hired while we were building the project. That's 49% of all new hires. 240 apprenticeships with the emphasis on Anacostia and east of the river neighborhoods. And 400 residents were hired for the operations of phase 1. Oops, sorry. So our first phase of the project was about 2.3 million square feet. That opened in October 2017 after an aggressive 42 months of construction. Phase 2 shown here is now under construction. It'll add another 1 million square feet and will deliver in 2022. Mixed use environment includes apartments, condominiums, 3 hotels, office, retail, and a 6,000 person concert hall called the Anthem. Unique features that we created at the project are a project funded circulator bus to the metro and the mall, and also the launch of a water taxi service that connects us to Maryland, National Harbor, and also to Alexandria, Virginia. And the project's run by a dedicated 10-person project community association on a day-to-day basis. They do all of our programming, entertainment, events, security, and the maintenance of the project. The design thesis of the project from its inception was to build an inclusive, unique, vibrant neighborhood on the waterfront that exemplified the character and strength of the southwest quadrant of DC and celebrated some of the tremendous history that existed here before us. The project intended to bring the city to the water's edge, become a thriving part of the city's fabric, and have a lasting positive impact on the nation's capital and the urban design of the capital. We're hopeful that we've achieved some of that to date, and the project will continue to evolve through phase 2, but also over the coming decades. And we really certainly appreciate the recognition and this great award from such an esteemed organization as the Congress for Urbanism. So with that, I'm hoping that I stayed on time, but I want to thank you all for this great award on behalf of everybody at Hoffman Madison and all my partners that have worked on the project.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Hoffman Madison Waterfront, and congratulations. I also want to say a final congratulations to all the winners. I want to offer my thanks to my fellow jurors, to the excellent CNU support staff for helping us out, and to the CNU generally. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Lori.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. That concludes our 20th annual Charter Awards ceremony. And this is actually the last educational session of CNU 28, a virtual gathering. However, for those of you who can't bear to end it all, there are 2 pub crawls scheduled tonight. The pub crawl for young CNUers, that doesn't count me. That is to start in about half an hour or up around 7:30. And then there's the closing CNU 28 pub crawl at 8:30. I want to also thank again Lynn Richards, our CEO and president, for her determination to hold a Congress this year, even though we couldn't do it in person. And again, to thoroughly thank the 8 members of our CNU staff for the yeoman work they put in to produce this virtual Congress. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for your participation. And we all look forward to getting together again next year in Oklahoma City, May 19th to May 22nd, 2021. And we all hope that we will be able to be together again in person. Thank you all, and good night.